Hey guys, so this whole week we've been kind of just talking about how people's views have changed and how they value music. And you can't have that conversation without bringing the pro touring and the national bands to the table here, because they have taken it on the nose harder than anyone, honestly. You know, these are people who've dedicated their lives to the craft. They are full time. They do nothing else but, write and record music and tour. And these guys have been taking a beating for many, many years. I can remember back in the early 90s, the big concern was, just how record companies were raping bands. I can't tell you how many bands that I have talked to who were like chart-topping bands all over MTV when MTV had music on MTV. It was like, I'm talking like number one hits, top 10 hits, top 40 hits, not one-hit wonders, bands that were actually together and was doing all the right things, and struggled to make a dime because the record companies had this formula in place for failure, where they were the only ones making the money. They would fund them money for a tour. They would have to pay them back for the tour. They'd have to pay them back for the recording time in the studio. And by the time they did all that, there wasn't a lot of money left over. Now, some bands did make an enormous amount of money, most bands did not, and I could give you many, many examples of that. And then as you fast forward to the whole Napster thing, and when, online streaming became a thing, which is pretty much the world we live in now, I regularly see artists online complaining about how, they have a hit record and they're getting, literal less than pennies, like a tenth of a penny on the dollar from what they used to make when they had a hit record, because of how the streaming services are set up and how they're just absolutely getting raped. Some of those artists have removed their music from those services altogether. Other artists have realized that, hey, we got to be on there in order to draw people to our concerts, because now we have to tour our brains out because it's the only way we can make money. They're all trying to personally network themselves through social media content and that sort of thing, and trying to monetize their life in that respect. I know guys that are selling used guitar strings and broken drumsticks and autographed, old drum heads and, just anything to try and make a buck in the business. There's never been a time that those cats have had to create multiple streams of income more than what it is right now. And that mentality has trickled down into the middle market, where people just don't value music like they used to. They don't have to pay for it anymore. Or they pay $10 a month and get access to a bazillion songs. I heard one guy say once, he says, it's never been easier to get your music out in front of people, but it's never been harder to actually make money from it.